What's up, everyone? George Balekji here with Boston has entered the chat. But hey, check out the latest episode of Foxborough Rush. Keegan, Stefon, and I run through, are the Patriots just going to rely on the draft to improve their overall offense? Because that's how things are shaping up right now. But also, how do they address the wide receiving room as well? Do they sign someone? Do they trade for someone? Do they add someone at all? And then we talk a little vision for the defense. New linebacking room could be the overall look, but a new look from front to back as well. That's Foxborough Rush, wherever you get your podcast. New episodes dropping every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but catch the newest episode of the week wherever you get your podcast. Now, let's get to Boston has entered the chat. All right, let's bring it in. It's Boston has entered the chat. George Balekji here with Kasey Hudson. Kasey, your first St. Patty's Day weekend in Boston.
I know, and I feel like I'm not doing it justice, but also
you're not drinking any Guinness? You having any shepherd's pie?
No.
Chicken pot pie?
Any of it.
Have you gone to a pub?
No.
A bar?
No.
Whoa.
Yeah, nothing. It's been a very greenless.
Do you not like St. Patty's Day?
Okay, so I love St. Patty's Day. I was about to say, I have completely dishonored my family because my grandmother's from Kerry, Ireland.
Yeah.
Plot twist, everyone. So a part of me, like, I don't feel this over-exaggerated need to celebrate because, like, I've done my damage in this life so far, but getting acclimated in Boston,
you haven't
done anything.
Yeah. So I'm a little, I don't know.
I know it's bad. It's bad,
it's but thing.
Because I'm still trying to figure out what's what and who's who and getting around Boston and stuff. Like, I ended up in North End right after the game.
So you went to the Italian part of Boston.
I went to the
St.
Italian part of Boston. Exactly. So I'm off to a rockin' start.
Here. Warren Tavern in Charlestown, it'll probably be packed. JJ Foley's South End, that'll probably be packed. You could go to McGonagall's in Dorchester. It's a good one.
Okay.
So just try one of those three.
Okay.
And get a Guinness.
I'm going to mark down.
And get a Guinness.
I still have some time.
Do you drink Guinness?
To fully least into. Yeah. Oh my gosh. My mom keeps it on the bottom.
That's all I ask.
Yeah.
Off air, I'll give you more bars.
I will do that. At least I do an Irish coffee. I did have that.
What's Irish?
This weekend.
Kahula?
You could do like Bailey's or actually like the way my father prefers it, a shot of whiskey and coffee and black coffee.
Nice.
That's how it really goes down.
Yeah.
Not all the creams and stuff. He goes, you don't have to over sugar it. He's like, you just give me the straight stuff.
I'll replace my cinnamon with whiskey in my next black coffee then.
There you go.
Maybe I'll go decaf tonight.
And
just
add
so I
a little
yeah,
there
exactly.
You go.
I don't need the
do
caffeine.
That, and then I'll make it to one of the places so that we can correct all of these mistakes that I have made.
St. Patty's edition of the chat. I'm wearing green. Kasey isn't.
Green nails.
Yeah.
Guys, bear with me.
You got to look hard. Like, I need to pull out a magnifying glass to find those.
It's there. We always see how I hold on to the mic. I always make sure it's like an appearance in the mix. I want to say I have green socks on.
I'm just saying. Just saying.
Apparently, none of what we have on is green.
This is a dark shade of green. I mean, probably the studio kind of washes out a green, makes it look brown. So when we're not talking about splitting G's or St. Patty's Day, we'll be talking about what the Patriots can do for the wide receiving room. Now that Cooper Kupp is in Seattle, Chris Godwin is staying in Tampa, DK Metcalf's in Steelers, with the Steelers in Pittsburgh. Those are the big top three. They got none of them. We'll also talk about the draft a little bit as well. Travis Hunter, Will Campbell, what makes sense at 4? And if neither of those guys, who do they go with? As always, we'll run through what's trending, including Bill Belichick doing yoga
things
on the beach. And here's a fun one. Our very first F1 race review. We're going to take a look back at the Australian Grand Prix, give you guys a review, something we're starting. F1 season just started. You know I'm a big F1 fan. I found out Kasey is too.
Same.
We're both Tifosi. We're both fan of Ferrari. So that'll be a fun one, especially with Ferrari, once again, being Ferrari.
Well,
let's start with the Patriots wide receiving room first off. So they missed out on DK Metcalf. He was traded to the Steelers for the 52nd overall pick. They missed out on Cooper Kupp. He signed with the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. And they missed out on Chris Godwin, who stayed in Tampa. We could even throw in a Davante Adams. He always wanted to be on the West Coast, but he ended up with the Rams, replacing Cooper Kupp, which was an upgrade for Los Angeles. And Darius Slayton, a guy I wanted, very underrated pick, decided to stay with the Giants, only making $12 a year. It's not looking good for the Patriots wide receiving room. I'm on board with the Mac Hollins signing, but he's a wide receiver 4.
Right.
They need a guy that is a wide receiver 2 around the league, but would be their number 1.
Yep.
They need a guy that is clearly their number 1. Right now, they don't have it. And the ones that remain out there, they're not ones either.
Yeah, it's getting a little daunting, and the funny part about it is, Travis and I just picked apart the whole do players not want to come here. It doesn't seem like they want to, and it was alluded to as Siberia, but it almost makes you somewhat question, okay, if it's silent on the wide receiving end, if there's all this movement and question marks around the offensive line, does this mean that we're just locking it in and trying to make something magical happen when it comes to the draft.
Yeah.
Because now that's where my head is going on all of this. But when you and I got a chance to chat last, it's just like, you got to give Drake Maye a veteran. You've got to give him a guy that's going to help him be able to accelerate the process of getting acclimated into a new system and developing in a crucial year too. You can't make everything brand new at the same time, especially if that offensive line ends up being quite young. Then you're going to have to invest in a veteran presence that's going to help elevate Drake Maye's game so that everybody can get moving and gelling, and you're not looking at a 3-year rebuild, retool. You're looking at a 5-year if you don't put in the right pieces at the right time at the right age. So I'm a little shocked about it, but there's still some good pieces out there. It's just like, what's it going to take to reel them in? Because now it is feeling like Siberia.
It's a bad wide receiving market. Like, they go out, they got Milton Williams. Wasn't just the best free agent on the defensive side of the ball, but one of the best free agents, point blank, period. They've had a successful free agency and legal tampering period so far with the guys they've signed. They've elevated the floor of the defense and the ceiling, but on every level, and they addressed all their issues on defense as well. Can't get to the quarterback, can't stop the run, can't keep wide receivers from beating them on the outside. They addressed that. The issue when you look at the wide receiving market is that it's just like bare minimum. And it was from the beginning. Once T. Higgins was tagged, and the understanding was you'd have to give up 2 firsts for him, that changed the whole complexity of the offseason for the Patriots. Chris Godwin, that's the one we keep going back to. It's like, well, the Patriots were going to offer him $20 million more over the lifetime of his contract. Okay, so you're going to pay him around $28 million a year. Yeah, that's like the AAV, and that's a potential earning. But what was the guaranteed money, A? Because he got $45 million guaranteed from Tampa. And that's what matters to players. And that's a guy coming off a really bad injury, is going to be 29. For him, you want to be closer to a contender, not get further away, especially at this point in his career. That's why it made sense. But it was after the T. Higgins, after the Chris Godwins, that's when you'd kind of have to get picky in a way, because sure, there are the players like an Amari Cooper, but just isn't the guy. Kind of seems checked out, kind of seems washed, for lack of a better term.
Won't have the patience for this locker room and build.
Yeah, Stefon Diggs, same thing. Like, you don't want him in this locker room. He's not a fit. And he's another slot. Like, they have Jalen Polk. They have Demario Douglas. They have Kendrick Bourne. That would be another slot you'd bring in. Same thing with the Keenan Allen. Deontay Johnson, you want no part of him here. And, like, that's where it gets difficult. I go back to when Mike Vrabel was talking about the free agency signing, they're asking about David Andrews. And his response, in a way of like, how do you address the offensive line room now? He said, there's still quite a bit of time left until the NFL draft. Don't want to be reckless. I want to be intentional. And that's where I think where there were the reports they didn't even offer to trade for DK Metcalf. Like, they had a better draft pick and more cap space. They could have given the Steelers a better deal, better return, and paid him more. Like, it would have worked on both avenues. And he ended up in Pittsburgh. Playoffs. It's not warm weather, all of that. So they could have gotten him. When it came to Chris Godwin, he hit free agency and he decided to stay. They were probably intentional how much they were offering when it came to guaranteed money coming off his injury. So T. Higgins, now the reports are since he's making significant progress, of getting him an extension. And T. Higgins and Jamar Chase have the same exact agent. So when they're talking extensions with T. Higgins, they're also tying everything into Jamar Chase. We could very well see the Bengals manage it with the cap space, give out a ton of guaranteed money, like historical for them, and extend both guys now, because that's how it looks like it's going to work. And they need to get ahead of Jamar Chase's market, because a guy like a DK Metcalf, a guy like a Myles Garrett, guys like Max Crosby reset the market where they want him to be the highest paid non-quarterback. It all comes back to Cooper's old, Stefon Diggs isn't a culture fit, Keenan Allen is good as a professional, but how much are you going to pay these guys? And that's where they have to be intentional. And that's where it kind of looks like it could just end up being the draft. Because with all of that too, like, there's a Ted McMillan, but he's not worth a first-round pick, especially as high as the Patriots would be. Like, they're not going to trade out of the top 10. If you get a Jaden Higgins, he's a slot. Xavier Restrepo, slot. Jalen Noel, slot. You'd have a logjam at a certain position. You don't want guys playing out of position. They did that with Jalen Polk, and he was a non-factor on top of having very bad wide receiving coaching in that room.
It's going to stunt development.
They need to be intentional, because eventually they're going to have a really young room. There are guys that can fall to them. There are guys that can hit later on in the draft. There are prospects I love. But that's where they are just being, as Vrabel says it, like, they are being intentional with every move, and they're being very conscientious of, like, their timeline, what works, will help short-term and long-term. And you build the offensive line, you could just you raise the floor of the wide receiving room overall, you coach these guys up, like, that will make the offense better, because Drake Maye was able to work and be successful and show the glimpses you want
in a mess
with the worst offensive line and one of the worst wide receiving rooms in the league. So that's what matters a lot.
Yeah, no, and I think that that's a good point. Not to mention, is it kind of tracking back to not over jamming the slot receiving room for better terms. But when you have a younger guy in development and stuff like that, and I know sometimes when we would do interviews in Tampa Bay, they would talk about kind of like when you're trying to get a young guy acclimated in a system and you're trying to develop his game, you're trying to work on his release time and stuff, sometimes having those bigger body targets help out a lot. And you see kind of moments of panic over the previous season where like Drake Maye would kind of look for a Hunter Henry. So like he had bigger numbers this year, Hunter Henry that is, than he has in any of his previous seasons. And you can just tell that was kind of like a not a panicked, because Drake Maye, I don't think we saw much panic out of. He is a risk taker, and he's confident behind the risk that he's taking. But in those moments where like he had to make a play happen, he would try to find that bigger body. So kind of getting more of that larger wideout in the mix is the only reason why I'd lean towards a Keenan Allen. You mentioned professional, and I think that's the best way to put it. If he's not asking for astronomical numbers, you're talking about a guy that's going to come and do his job and go. But I don't know if it fits the culture of what Mike Vrabel mentioned from the beginning. We've seen flashier names that could have been an opportunity. We know they have the money to bring these guys in, but they don't care about these names because they have something very strategic in mind, and everybody has to fit the bill. So I think that you make a great point to say, have the offensive line situated and then kind of work your way out from there. I just would hate for them to miss an opportunity to bring in a veteran presence to help with development. Like they almost really do need two veterans on both sides between the offensive line and wide receiving room to help elevate everything. It just depends on if they have the patience to see how that's all going to pan out. But I don't love some of the options when it comes to the draft unless they have an ability to make a big move for Travis Hunter, which is the biggest conversation that takes place over and over and over again. So it's kind of weird, but I don't think that Mike Vrabel's the kind of guy that doesn't have a plan. I feel like they already know the pieces that they want and where they're going to make the investments. They're not going to toss all their money to try to solve a problem because they're not looking for quick fixes.
Or they're not going to try and trade all the draft assets, which is the Tyler, the T. Higgins, and even the DK Metcalf in this one. Like, he comes in, he's the number one receiver. He's one of the best in the league. He changes the whole dynamic of the offense. And they put it like they were the rumors. It's not a scheme fit with Josh McDaniels. That's BS. It's when you have someone that good, especially the huge void where you don't have a wide receiver 1, 2, and 3. Say if you have a DK Metcalf, you would have a wide receiver 1, a bunch of wide receiver 3s, and some wide receiver 4s in your room. Like he's clear cut, the most explosive player on the offense, the scariest player on the offense outside of Drake Maye, the quarterback, and he would have worked. But they're doing that line in the sand of we're being intentional of the guy we bring in, what he'll be in the locker room, how much of a professional he is, what we're giving up, how much we're paying, where they doled out all that guaranteed money in free agency, especially between Milton Williams and Carlton Davis and Robert Spillane, like 3 big, massive ads. Like that will help out the defense a ton. But to that part is those are guys that like they understand, buy into their system and work with them. There's something that they know. There's something that they getting information, gathering out, and DK Metcalf didn't like about it. Because then there's, okay, would they trade for an A.J. Brown? Mike Vrabel would, but would the Eagles give him up? And is a number 4 overall pick worth it for an A.J. Brown? In this draft, in a way, yes, you won't find a wide receiver like him. So it's like higher than we've seen any team give up for a number 1 receiver. But on the other side, too, if the Eagles trade A.J. Brown, let's say, for like in this hypothetical, who do they draft at number 4? There's no A.J. Browns in this draft. Ted McMillan's good, but at his size and his slender frame, like 6'4", his height doesn't always work out. You need to be bigger. You need to be a Vincent Jackson or a Drake London or a Mike Evans to work out in that way. And he could be a Drake London. I see that. Like a Matthew Golden, a Emeka Egbuka, those guys are good. But that's the thing, too, where when the Titans, in theory, traded A.J. Brown, they took Treylon Burks. Same build as A.J. Brown. They thought to replace him, and it was a bust. That's where it has to make sense for both sides. Then there's like Brandon Aiyuk being shopped around by the 49ers who want to trade him. To me, that's an immediate red flag. 1 year into, second year of the contract for him, extending the guy. Coming off a torn ACL, he's being traded. They're hitting the hard reset. And they have a number 1 wide receiver. They have that number 1 guy in their building. They're willing to part with him. That's where, again, I would stay away. That's where, and I've done it on past episodes of Rush, you run through the top receiving rooms in the NFL. You run through the top receivers in the NFL. They were drafted and extended. They don't hit free agency, and they're rarely traded. And when they are, that is a team that has a backup plan, or they're in the ability, and they have the ability to rebuild. Like when Davante Adams was traded, look at that wide receiving room now. Yes, Christian Watson always gets injured, but he's good. When Tyreek Hill was traded, because the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, they can do what other teams can't. And they've been able to win Super Bowls with Mecole Hardman, Kadarius Toney, Juju Smith-Schuster, their best wide receivers. They're paying the price now. But also Tyreek Hill is washed, and he didn't translate the playoff wins for the Dolphins. So there's like 1 and 2 in everything. That's where it's tough. It's a weak wide receiver draft. But if they get a Jaden Higgins in round 2, maybe a Jalen Noel or Xavier Restrepo in round 3, or a Pat Bryant later, Trey Harris later. That's how they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to throw a lot of darts at the board. Mm-hmm. If 1 or 2 hit a year and then they look at their wide receiving room, they have a T. Higgins, Jamar Chase-esque wide receiver room, they look at it, that's how it pays off. They got to take it slow. And the same thing of what Cooper Kupp got paid. Again, they were being intentional of what they were paying guys.
Yeah. Well, and then making the point to even trying to shop a guy like Aiyuk, like between the injuries and the fact that he still wants more money, there was already drama in the summer. He's had 2 dramatic offseason in terms of not being on the same page with his employer, basically. You're not going to bring that guy in because it's going to be his show, and that's clearly what they're trying to steer away from. Yeah. Somebody who's going to come in and make it about themselves. But kind of back to the A.J. Brown thing for a minute, I feel like there could be a conversation on the table here. And tell me if I'm stretching it too much, because I think about the number of games that Brown missed due to injury and how the Eagles were still able to kind of like have decent games, good games. And now they're pulling in enough pieces to where they're not going to be completely out of pocket if they're without Brown. Yeah. And they do have a little bit of depth in that wide receiving room. It's just they all got injured around the same time. So they have the capability of moving on from him. And I think that it wouldn't particularly cost the Patriots too much, but I think it'd be worth a draft pick to bring him in because he could grow with a team like this. Yeah. As long as he's not looking to have that win now mentality, and he shouldn't, he should have been able to kind of suppress that thirst that players have in this time of their career. So he could be an interesting target. But I feel like when you're in a development stage as such, like, why not go and build out in the draft and bring guys in that are going to have the buy-in, that are going to want to have those contract extensions and grow with a team. It just seems like a better fit for what Vrabel and company are piecing together. And again, when you have a young quarterback, I'm pushing for a veteran to help. But if you're looking at a 3 to 5 year rebuild and everybody's on the same page with accepting that, you're going to see something much better in terms of like the product that's produced than trying to get these pieces moving out, because you don't know what's going to pan out. There's just too many unknowns. I'd love to see Xavier in this system. I think that there's some guys now that you just kind of have a versatility to them, so maybe you can play with more options. And we know McDaniels isn't always like a straightforward guy with the playbook. He tries to get things mixed up a little bit, so it would pay off for them to kind of invest in the draft. It would be like AJ Brown's worth a number 4 overall pick, but as we saw literally in the Super Bowl, like Saquon got them to the Super Bowl. He's taken out of the game plan. He's that game-changing receiver. And Davante Smith is good, and he stepped up, like you said, when he's out. But also the Eagles, like, their window is still win now. Like, they won a Super Bowl. They know they can repeat. That's why they extended Saquon. That's why they've continued to pay Jalen Hurts. And he's going to be 28 next season. If he was about to be 29, then you're getting ahead of the horse maybe. Right. If he was about to be 30, then I can see it. But they've had him. They'll now have him if they have him this upcoming season from his like age 25 season on, like that. And that's the golden years of wide receivers. Right. Like, they were able to take advantage of the Titans making a massive mistake from trading him, but they're not going to make that same mistake and trade him away. And that same thing of, you have to think of the locker room where A.J. Brown, yes, he's had the headaches. Yes, they have Devontae Smith. Yes, they've won a Super Bowl. But if you trade him away, then that changes how everyone views Howie Roseman, right? True. And that projects outward free agents too. Like, you can sign here, but then they win, and they'll send you to, say, New England, where it's a 5-year rebuild or a 3-year rebuild, however anyone wants to look at it. But the one you point out, the Josh McDaniels, and I think that's where relying on the draft, it's what no one wants to hear. Yeah. But this team has to find sustainability. Like, they signed all the free agents, and they got a lot older with the signings. Spillane's 29. Harold Landry's 29. Carlton Davis is up there and deals with injuries himself. Milton Williams is young, about to enter his prime. Morgan Moses is 34. Matt Collins is 32. They got older. The draft is where you need to find the sustainability. They can't go out and spend like this and pay older vets like this every year. And that's probably, they look at the wide receiving room and they go, this will be the longer rebuild. Draft by draft. Get pass catchers, get multiple weapons. I think that's the avenue they want to go with it. Yeah, it's having your quarterback grow. It's getting those guys on the same wavelength and having them kind of in the same chapter of their career. Yeah. Because I think that that's going to be better manageable in the coaching perspective. And when you're talking kind of like franchise players and faces, that's where they're rebuilding in entirety. Yeah. I mean, right now their franchise player is just Drake Maye for the most part. That's it, yeah. So they have to add in those other pieces. And I'll admit it, originally I thought in order for this roster to get a little sexier, you got to bring in a big name. But you just think back to Vrabel's press conference. Relationship, connection, having that open communication. You cannot do that with guys that are all about themselves. You can't do that with guys that are looking for instant gratification or looking to win now. So they're going to have to go young, and they're going to have to go all in the draft.
It's, again, being intentional with the spending, even if it is for like a Cooper Kupp. We got like 3 years, $45 million total from the Seahawks. Guaranteed money is probably like a little more than half, like 25 guaranteed. But that's also a guy, again, never played more than 12 games the last 3 seasons. Had his 2021 year, and like after that, he's good when he's playing, but he's not healthy and he's not reliable and he's not dependable. And like they need that. They need someone constantly in the lineup, especially if they're going to pay that money, or else they can carry it over, maybe swing bigger next offseason. We'll see. Hey, if you want to stream the entire Sox season with a NESN 360 annual plan, available at an all-new reduced price of just $20 a month paid annually. And for a limited time, get 4 free tickets to Fenway with your purchase. Visit NESN360.com to sign up today. So as we talk draft, the exciting part of it is, at number 4, it could be Travis Hunter. He would need to fall to them.
Yeah.
Because in front of them, 1, 2, 3, they're lucky that the Titans, Browns, and Giants all need a quarterback. Free agency hasn't worked for them. But the Titans very well, as we've heard Mike Borgonzi come out and say there's generational talent in this draft. We're not going to pass on that. Generational talent is Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. It's Cam Ward can be great. Shador Sanders can be good, but they're not the generational guys. They're going to take one of the two, possibly. If they take a quarterback, can the Browns justify passing on to Travis Hunter? If they go Shador Sanders, can the Giants justify that? Do they go Abdul Carter? The Patriots basically at the end of the day want to end up with a Carter or Hunter.
Right.
If they take Travis Hunter, they're facing that possibility. We didn't get great in the offensive line room via free agency, but Travis Hunter's in front of us. That's the challenge they face. Do you take a Will Campbell, who's wingspan, all his measurables, he's an anomaly as a tackle prospect, or do they go Travis Hunter, who's an anomaly in the best way possible of an overall football prospect?
We're talking about the Titans, right?
No, talking Patriots at 4.
Patriots, if they take... See, priority to me is like they could use a Travis Hunter more, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Because it just kind of speaks back to like what we're saying, like a guy that's going to grow with this team, but like also going back to the fact that he made it so clear he wants to play both positions. You have to have the right coach to guide you through that so that you can actually be beneficial to the team. And seeing as how Vrabel, did both sides of the ball back in his day a couple of times, I think that he'd have the right capability to manage that to where he'd be an asset to the team. Because a lot of teams and conversations that I've heard and seen is that, it would be better to prioritize him at CB and then kind of give him like a proper package for wide receiver, but he wouldn't do heavy lifting for wide receiving. Yeah. They would use him in very specific situational football. So I think he would benefit in terms of what he's saying that he wants in the Patriot system with a coach that can give him what he wants, but also make sure it counts bigger for the team.
Yeah.
The fall down, I think, it's getting a little bit more attainable in my brain because it sounds like Giants jump to 1, grab Cam Ward. It sounds like Sanders, like you said, like the top couple teams, they really need a quarterback more than anything else. And Titans wouldn't mind strengthening their defense while they're trying to figure out what their offense is going to look like moving forward. Like, I think there's still too many question marks for the Titans offense, whereas like, here it's Drake Maye, here what the vision is, here what the timeline is, 3 to 5 years. And Hunter can probably slot into that pretty decently.
Yeah. What's tough is at that 3 spot, say if Giants jump up from 3 to 1, that means Titans would be picking 3, Browns 2. That's a tough of like, they have that need at wide receiver. They have that need in the cornerback room, but they have that huge need on the edge. If Travis Hunter, if he falls to them at 4 and they're faced with, we don't have a left tackle, but Will Campbell's there, but we don't have a wide receiver 1 and Travis Hunter's there. And like to you point out, and it makes sense too, it's harder to play offense full-time, get dropped into defense because defense is all about communication, being on the same page, knowing what you're different. Running. Yeah, you make a mistake on defense, that's when someone's wide open, especially on the back end of the defense, and that's when plays get blown up and you're just blowing coverages and it can lead to much bigger errors. You make a mistake on offense at wide receiver, you run the wrong route or something. I mean, he's still a sick athlete. Throw the ball in his vicinity, he comes down with it. He's likely to be a full-time defensive back, and then they bring him in on money downs, I always say. Red zone, goal and short, 3rd down, 3rd and short, even 4th down too. And you can go in and go, run this route, go here. This is what it is. Just worry about that one thing. You don't have to know what everyone else is doing. Right. You just have to know what you're running. It makes sense. If they draft him, they are getting a really good slot cornerback full-time, which is in the modern day NFL, you need 3 good coverage corners. And then they're getting Garrett Wilson whenever he's on the field at wide receiver. Mm-hmm. And I just think, too, with how deep the draft is at defensive line in the middle of the pack, second, third round, this draft does have a lot of tackles. They just don't have that like sheer elite blue chip tackle who take top. With the 2/3 they have, with the 38th overall pick, they could go Travis Hunter at 4. They can live with sitting on a tackle, then trading back into the first. If it's a Arante Ursary, if it's a Josh Simmons who's doing well with his knee, he's going to hold his own pro day, as he's saying. So that means he's recovering well from that surgery. To face Will Campbell and Travis Hunter, again, I just go, if it is Travis Hunter's there, I think they take him 10 times out of 10. I think they have to. Even if Will Campbell's there, even if Mason Graham is there, even if Armand Membu's there, the guys that they may be linked to, the guys everyone's saying they should draft, you can't pass on Travis Hunter. And it's also like we're talking about, this is how I'd play him as a rookie with Carlton Davis and Christian Gonzalez. Mm-hmm. He could be a full-time receiver his rookie year, or full-time corner his rookie year, as we're saying. They could flip him to the other side of the ball.
Right.
Like and say he doesn't work out at cornerback. It's, you know what, he doesn't really have it. All right, you have an elite receiver. Say he doesn't work out at wide receiver. All right, you have an elite corner.
Yes.
And then as Carlton Davis comes off the books, they're going to extend and pay Christian Gonzalez a lot of money. As he comes off the books, they're going to extend and pay Travis Hunter a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And like that's where it works out, where the flexibility he gives with cap space, the flexibility he gives with the roster and depth chart, and the flexibility and just the dynamic he adds to defense and offense. I would not pass on Travis Hunter. I don't think they can at all. I just, if they did, then it's like
it would be
like cars on fire. That's I'm not trying to incite. I'm not trying to incite a riot.
You're not motivating anything.
I'm not saying you should do that. You shouldn't do that.
Don't.
But if people did, I would be shocked.
Okay. You wouldn't participate.
I would not.
Either. Okay.
That's just dumb. I'm gonna light my car or other people's car. That's rude to those people, and like I don't want to get arrested.
It's that whole
either.
nose face thing that parents always told you growing up. But no, I couldn't agree with it more. It's a better business decision for one, and it gives you so much flexibility. And actually, everything you just said there just brings me back to what you mentioned about like wide receivers and the contracts that they get coming out of these rookie years. Like he has the capability to actually grow and solidify himself here. Whereas like if he ended up at a Titans, like 3 years later, he couldn't be sure that they're going to lock in pay for him.
Yeah.
And because of the versatility, because of the two-way play off the ball, like they might have a different need in 3 years, and that's going to play with his pay. Whereas like here, he's needed on both sides. He can be usable in both ways, or if he ends up switching to full-time one or the other, the money is still there, the opportunity is still there, and the need is still there. You can't say that about too many other systems at the moment. And then also the fact of like, if you had to choose which position to go younger in, I'm going to go towards wide receiver.
Yeah.
The relationship between a wide receiver and a quarterback, them just kind of being in the same pivotal moments of their career, I think plays out better. Whereas like you and I talked about this when it came to the Andrews conversation. A veteran on that offensive line is going to help take him to the next step a bit quicker than the young guys. They've already had young guys they've been trying to insert in, and then injuries kind of played a plague to the situation. So getting somebody who can come in and kind of anchor that faster sooner rather than later, I think is more of a priority. So you don't miss out on a business opportunity, versatility, and something that's going to play out in a long-term business scheme to go with another young offensive lineman.
Yeah.
They don't have the development at the moment.
And it's just, again, there's more depth at the position where he can be an elite, his ceiling is an elite wide receiver, and he has all the measurables, 6 foot plus, 190 pounds plus, long arms,
athletic.
As a corner, and insane athlete, really good hands, really good catch radius, really good at contested catches, great on the boundary, great in the red zone. And then as a corner, really good covering the slot, and has 31 plus inch arms, like insanely long. And that's, you get your hands on the receiver first, knock them off the route, disrupt their timing. That's what it's all about. He can play zone. He can play man. At wide receiver, he can play inside, he can play outside, and he can do everything for you, run all the routes, and his speed. That's a thing of like, he's elite at both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Where Will Campbell is, he could play left tackle, but he'll likely be a guard, and that's what all the measurables say about him too. That's a tough part. And for a guy that was playing full-time receiver, full-time corner, and scouts say he should be a corner in this draft, he had 96 catches, over 1,200 yards, and 15 receiving touchdowns. Like
Big
he put up
plays.
top 5 numbers at wide receiver nationally, even bringing like the Nick and Ashes of San Jose. And then he was one of the best corners in football too. Like, won the Heisman, won the defensive awards, and I think you can't pass on him. And I don't think, as much as Mike Vrabel is emphasizing the trenches, they see Travis Hunter, I think there's no way he passes on him either.
No. And plus, think about this. Elevating your defense when you're in a rebuild, you're going to make yourself that much more competitive because at least you're protecting yourself while you're trying to figure out how to get points on the board. You're protecting yourself from getting steamrolled on the other side.
You can get stops.
Exactly. So I think that helps tremendously. And then you just described it perfectly. He's a big play guy. He can make things happen. You've got a quarterback who's finding his footing, but also takes those risky plays. And I thought I saw some good things out of Drake Maye in the preseason previously.
Yeah.
I feel like there would just be an instant connection with those two having fun on the field that would make things matter.
Yeah. He just raises the ceiling and the floor of the offense so much. Hey, if you want more on the Patriots, free agency, draft conversations, Mike Vrabel's a head coach. Drake Maye is a starting quarterback. He's a future. They have number 4 overall pick. So what do the Patriots do? Well, check out Foxborough Rush every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else you get your podcasts. All right, talking about intentionally spending, intentionally working the roster. The Falcons plan on keeping Kirk Cousins on their roster, which triggered a guarantee on a $10 million roster bonus due in 2026. So Kirk Cousins has guaranteed himself $330+ million over his 14-year NFL career. He's almost eclipsing Tom Brady, who earned $332 million in 23 seasons. Of course, Kirk Cousins has his legendary bag run of getting franchise tagged after franchise tagged after franchise tagged, and all that 100% guaranteed money.
Real agent.
The Falcons are still... This is a smart move. I'll explain that. But what do you think of when you hear this? Of just, really? They're going to keep him on? And by all means, it sounds like Michael Penix will be their starting QB.
Yeah, well, I think we saw the Falcons starting to kind of move away from him throughout this season because at first it felt like they were an underestimated team who were they were overplaying. They were making things happen more than anticipated, and then it just started to fall apart. But between the leadership that you think that you sign up for, between the plays that you are expecting to be executed with the money that came in with Kirk Cousins, I'm surprised at them keeping him. But he does have a leadership mentality to him. I mean, any player that you talk to or interview from the Vikings in his time there, he has an elevating presence. He helps guys learn. He helps guys develop. So I think that's why one of the perks is of keeping him around, because Penix will say that was anxious to learn from a guy like Kirk Cousins. Like, he even spoke out when it was like, hey, we're bringing in Cousins. What does this all mean? And he was like, I'm psyched to learn from Kirk Cousins. And it was underestimated what he was going to do with the Vikings. So he might not be bringing that play down to the Falcons, but I could understand not the money side, but the keeping him around side, the mental aspect of it.
Especially Michael Penix, an older second-year quarterback.
Right.
Because he was a 6-year guy in college football as well, between Indiana and Washington.
All that mess from back then.
What's that?
I said all that mess from back then.
I know.
The portal,
injuries,
the
exactly.
COVID, the injuries,
COVID, exactly.
7-year seniors, yeah.
It's also Kirk Cousins. If they trade him post-June 1, then he comes off the books at $27 million they'd owe him, and that opens up their cap space. So they watch their back by keeping him now, but also all you need is one injury at some point, and straight up in the season before the trade deadline. Like, that's where the position they're in is. If a quarterback goes down with a contending team, then they have the most valuable thing. They have a starting level quarterback that teams will take a swing and take a try on and bring them in.
Yeah.
So as long as they trade him after June 1st, whatever the remaining cap hit is, the other team has to eat that. So it could be $27 million if they do it before the season begins. It could be $13 million if they do it at a certain point in the year. It's just being smart to not let him walk. That is still a very valuable asset. Just continually what they did, though, to give him that money coming off the torn Achilles. And within like 30 days later, after bringing in Kirk Cousins to draft Michael Penix, it shows that they didn't do all their due diligence.
They didn't trust their decision
They
at
saw
all.
something and go, we need to get a rookie now. And it made sense, too, on the timeline. But again, coming off the Achilles, him being an older quarterback, like, that is such a tough injury. They didn't have to give him this contract. That's where they made the mistake. I get the signing and the drafting. They could still navigate their way out of this. It's just not going to be pretty.
Yeah. They were living too much on the high of all the conversations that were taking place at the Vikings. Like, they were sold by what was taking place in Minnesota without realizing they didn't have the pieces to have the same delivery, and then of course the massive injury. So that was a misinterpretation on their part, that's for sure. But again, Penix gets to learn from a pretty great quarterback, and he even spoke to that a number of times. So
Aaron Rodgers, speaking of Vikings and quarterbacks, is waiting on the Vikings before making a decision on the Steelers and Giants. See Diana Rossini reporting there for The Athletic. Quote, Rodgers has been targeted by the Steelers and Giants, but has essentially put both teams on hold while he waits for clarity regarding the Vikings situation. I want him to go to Minnesota just for the career arc of him literally doing what Brett Favre did. Packers. He went Packers, Vikings, Jets, I think, or maybe he went Jets and I forget.
Jets.
He did Jets first. Brett Favre.
No.
He did Vikings and Jets.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But just in general, him just wearing the same helmets as that guy, doing the same teams. It's just fun. Like, he's waiting on the Vikings. He's making the Giants and Steelers wait and hold. If I'm the Vikings, like, it just doesn't make sense. Is J.J. McCarthy the guy? Everything you read coming out of there, they value the year he had to learn. They value the year he had to be in meeting rooms, pick up the system, and they value what he brings as a quarterback, where, like, they want the high floor. Aaron Rodgers, very high ceiling, very low floor at his age, and just what he is in a locker room, too.
That's the thing. It's what he is in a locker room. Like,
he's loved everywhere he goes, but eventually...
Yeah. Well, so I'm guessing, I would hope that his approach wouldn't be the same as what it was coming into the Jets, but I feel like the Jets made the mistake of kind of over enticing him to give him so much control. You know what I mean? Because when you think of like Jordan Love when Aaron Rodgers was still there, like that dynamic was good. Love talks and attests to the fact of like what he learned and the conversations that he was privy to. So McCarthy, again, he was injured. He didn't get a chance to kind of have his moment in the sun with the Vikings as anticipated. But you bring in a Rodgers, you're gonna make sure that JJ's growth is still going to be kind of like a slow situation, because I don't see Rodgers coming in, playing 1 year and then going out. He's on a mission. Like, as much as we all think that retirement's right there on the brink, I think we're still 2 years out from seeing the last of Aaron Rodgers. Vikings a better fit, though. When you
Vikings great fit. Offensive line, the weapons, the play calling.
Yeah. Like, he can't go in there and wreak too much havoc because he can't ask for more than what they're giving him. They're going to be presenting him with a pretty polished product.
It'd be like the Packers' offensive system. With a better he's the best wide receiver in the game in Justin Jefferson.
100%. And a defense that can actually accommodate offenses, plays, and strides. Like
he had like good wide receiving room, great defense with the Jets. The offensive line was terrible. The Vikings have the offensive line sorted out. Christian Darrisaw, we'll see how good he looks coming back from that injury. It's just, again, it's his ability on the field isn't all the way there, but just what can he do? Where eventually it's what he's done in Green Bay, it's what he's done in New York. It's everyone's fault but his.
Yeah,
and that's what he consistently does. And where you just extended Justin Jefferson, you have J.J. McCarthy under cost control. Like, their window is still now to be a playoff contender and make a run, possibly to an NFC Championship game. That's the ceiling I give them. Aaron Rodgers, I just don't see him maximizing that window for them. I feel like it's the risk reward isn't worth it for me. The risk reward for a different vet quarterback, if they were to give a chance, would be different. Yeah. Like if they brought back a Sam Darnold on a team-friendly deal, I'd live with that. But Rodgers, just what he's done, leaving these teams up in flames behind him every time. I don't know.
That's the problem. It's the way that he doesn't leave something better than he found it, or at least not as of late for the most part. But I think that he could still be beneficial to a Vikings team. Yeah. I think, again, you're coming off of a massive injury. You have an expectation to perform. I mean, he had uncharacteristic things such as all the interceptions and turnovers that wasn't, a compliment into his normal game.
Yeah.
I think a year removed, 2 years removed from the injury, in a better system with coaches that you're not sitting here completely dominating, and when it comes to what the team should and should not do, because there's going to be a more attainable level of respect both ways between him, Kevin, and like the defense and stuff. So I think that he can slot in here and at least be less turbulent, I guess I would say.
See, it's like everything where like his game is good.
Yeah.
But what you cannot calculate
is up here. Yep. What's going on there?
I don't think anyone can. Speaking of like what's going on over there, look at this. Bill Belichick and his girlfriend. Bill Belichick's 72. Jordon Hudson is 24.
She's hurting my last name.
Doing, bad for all. Hudson's disassociated with this one. Posted this on her Instagram. It was like 5 photos of Belichick and her doing yoga. Maybe it's cheerleading poses. I don't know.
Not in my years of cheering.
My thing is, okay, cool. Happy to get this perspective then. What are you doing? Why is he agreeing to take photos? Why are you posting this? Just don't post it.
Who took the photo?
Phone on the ground.
Okay.
Why are you wearing headphones while doing this at the beach? This is weird. This whole thing is weird. This is just continually, they're both weird.
Yeah.
This is very weird. Everything Bill Belichick has stood for, he's doing the exact opposite of. And again, this is weird.
Yeah.
I am so uncomfortable.
It's really uncomfortable.
And I try to like compartmentalize and ignore all this. You see that and you just like,
it's enough. Actually,
Yeah.
That's what I felt when I saw that. I was like, well, I've had enough of this now, because at first it was like, you're happy for him. Most guys go younger to feel young and alive. That's great. We're seeing him step out of his comfort zone.
A third of their, like literally 2/3 of their age younger.
I can't speak to that. I'm just going with the overall theme.
24 times 3 is 72.
Said. Well, then he must be feeling really young. Clearly, he can hold her up in the air with his legs. But it's just like everything else that surrounds what they are symbolizing
cringe
right now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just like a man, few words, but one of the most brilliant minds out there. You're seeing a lot of situations where it's like, did he have a say in this? Is he thinking this one through? Like, you're seeing somebody who looks like they just want to completely take their hands off of like decision making in life and like just exist. Like, I think Belichick just wants to exist right now, and she's in a position in her life and career where she's like, oh, heck yeah, I'm going to take full advantage of this.
Yeah, whatever occurs, like and I understand why she's doing that. I don't think it's for the right reasons.
Right.
It's not like, I want to show off I'm having a great time with Bill. She needs to continue to maximize her window of being relevant.
Every
situation. And say they part ways. She's going to get a podcast somewhere. Make a lot of money. Like, and so I get that.
She's allowing us to see in Bill Belichick's head eventually. Like, whether...
The stories, yeah.
Yes.
And people pay for that. They're both in this relationship for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
She's 24, he's 72. She's getting the bag, like forcing her way into the Dunkin' commercial. It's just weird.
And you called her, what'd you call her earlier? His momager?
Yeah. There's like the report that came out. I know Pablo Torre, who has a podcast, like he reached out to people he knows, and basically like she handles all his bookings, all his media relations. There was that email circulating where he asked her to be CC'd on all
that part
communication emails with UNC, basically everything through their Department of Athletics and Communications, all the SID stuff. And it's like, because if Duncan's going through her to get Bill Belichick on a Super Bowl commercial, without him even knowing, she can go, he'll do it if you put me in there and I need to get paid.
Yeah.
Everything's for the wrong reasons.
And nobody can question it, especially after you make the comment about CCing her on everything. Nobody's going to question it. So if she says, I have to be a part of everything.
And then he sends that. Is he even sending that email?
Right. Okay, actually, really quickly from another point of view, let's just say, we know that my family's connected to certain people music industry-wise. Wives, girlfriends, they can very much insert themselves to be handling management, and your husband, boyfriend has no idea how heavily inserted you are in a situation.
I'll handle your emails. Don't worry. He's like, all right, sounds good. And then he never has to look at an email again.
She's just sitting there giving him the Cliff Notes version. He's thinking life is lighter, but not realizing the micromanagement and the manipulation that's taking place. That's where I'll go with that.
I just want less beach yoga poses.
I want no more.
Yeah, I just want this all to end.
I'm glad Bill's healthy, but I want no more of this.
I feel bad. All right, we want to hear about all Boston sports and less on Bill and Jordan. Check out Nesson's Daily Sports Podcast. Boston has entered the chat. You can enter the conversation by tweeting at us using the hashtag NessonChat or email the chat at Nesson.com. Boston has entered the chat, available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever else podcasts are found. All right, F1 season's back. I'm excited for this one. So this is our F1 race review, and we're going to do the Australian Grand Prix. Awesome opening weekend. A race that had complete chaos everywhere you looked. Lando Norris, congrats to him, had pole and held on to win the race, which has always been a challenge for him. But it's Lando Norris taking one, Max Verstappen getting second place, George Russell third. This was such a chaotic race where in Australia, first race of the season, there's like 5 rookies, 5.5 really, but people, and a lot of racers switching teams, like Carlos Sainz now with Williams, Lewis Hamilton with Ferrari, Kimi Antonelli now with Mercedes. The downpour of rain leading up to the race, in the middle of the race, threw everything just out the window strategy, and a lot what you get in F1 is rain is the ultimate equalizer. Mm-hmm. We saw it happen in this very case where Lando made mistakes, was able to recover. Mm-hmm. Red Bull made mistakes when it came to pitting, and then they were never able to make up for it. Max Verstappen drove his butt off. Lando drove phenomenally well. And it was just an exciting opening weekend, and McLaren walks away with a crucial set of points and a win. And we just see that McLaren has the best car on track, but Max is still going to push that Red Bull car to the limits. Max Verstappen.
My gosh. Yeah. I loved this race kicking things off with chaos because a lot of conversation over the past couple of seasons is like who really truly has the better car, because Verstappen's just been impossible to stop.
Yeah,
he's in the mix of everything.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what I loved about this race, and especially Lando coming out on top, Lando's communication style with his team is getting better, because there was so much madness last year for McLaren where like Lando
rules.
Right. Like
So
and them screwing him over with what's his name, Piastri and stuff.
Oscar Piastri.
Exactly. So I feel like this was very much a statement win for Lando to be able to like have the communication that he wanted, overcome those issues, have the rain and all that mess. But McLaren is one of the better cars, and having the rain on the track, even though it makes kind of the control harder, one of the top things you hear about the McLaren car is like the heat. The heat off the track is what can mess with that the most, and that's why there's been so much miscommunication between Lando and his team in terms of like what he needs to do on the track versus what he's feeling. The oil mess ups and all these things. So love that for Lando. Love that for McLaren, even though like parents would be pissed because they're Ferrari fans. But I think Verstappen is going to try to come and bull his way all the way through back to the top. But Lando's got to position himself, and McLaren has to support him to make sure he has the points at the end of this season, because he kind of got snuffed last year.
What was important, it was Lando Norris took first. Now, Oscar Piastri made one big mistake, couldn't recover. He ended up finishing 9th. But they started 1, 2, 3. And Verstappen, right in the beginning, overtook Oscar Piastri. You saw, and to your point, we saw the issues, and it did happen at a point where McLaren was, with Oscar Piastri 3 seconds back of Lando, they said, go ahead, race. And when he's within a half second back, they said, hold position.
Yeah.
Oscar stay second, Lando stay first. That's the right move. Especially in the rain, you don't want your top 2 drivers, you don't want Lando and Oscar battling it out.
Right.
Where if you're too aggressive at one point, you make one mistake, you can go into the wall, which we saw happen to 6 different racers, only 5 different racers, only 14 guys end up finishing. No, 6. Sorry, redo the math. But you don't want them battling it out, because you can go from having first place and walking away with 27 points as they did.
Or losing both racers.
0 points, exactly,
Yeah.
and crashing your car. That was right. I feel for Oscar Piastri, because at his home circuit, this race was in Melbourne. He is Australian, driving so well. Him and Lando literally made the same mistake on the same turn, on the same lap. He just got into the track a couple seconds later than Lando didn't have as much time to recover, and still fought his way out of the grass.
Yeah.
Passed Lewis Hamilton on that final lap to go from 10th to 9th. And just, you see that anger, it sets him up and McLaren up well for the Chinese Grand Prix, the China Grand Prix next week. I just feel for him, but that's what you wanted from Lando.
Yeah.
And I think in a way that McLaren was smart with this, where you go with Lando, the more experienced driver. This will be Oscar's 3rd full season.
That's what it is.
In the rain, with all these variables, with Max Verstappen breathing down your neck. You want the guy that's been in more high pressure situations more and just knows how to drive in the rain. And that's what they went with Lando. I still don't know who their number 1 is, because Oscar's car by all means was faster. He had a better pace, but they get a first place win with Lando. This is something McLaren's going to have to manage race by race, and maybe mid-season have the definitive, you're number 1, you're number 2, and they have to stick with that. But you see McLaren making that big jump.
Yeah, I think that decision had to be made already before the season started, because it almost put that whole team in upheaval when they were in crucial point-grabbing moments in races.
Yeah.
And you make the perfect point here. Oscar's got the better car. Lando has the better decisiveness when it comes to what he needs to do on the track.
Yeah.
And I think that you also saw that in the rain, because the rain knocked out a number of rookies from this race. For one, for 2.
Isaac Hadjar crashed on the formation lap. Jack Doohan on the opening lap, just like 5 turns in. We saw Liam Lawson
Turn 5
go
was
into the
crippling
wall.
for a number of guys.
Gabriel Bortoletti went into the wall too.
Right. So like knowing that and knowing the tracks that are coming up and like what the McLaren car is better at managing, definitely has the better model to manage majority of the F1 tracks on the season, but it's going to come down to that decisiveness, and Lando's so good with it. So I think they need to stick with Lando being 1, let Oscar continue to grow in these situations, and then the races that they can bait him to win for, then like let that be what it is. But that indecision almost cost them so much last year.
Yeah, and especially in time in the rain, you can't mess around.
No way at all.
On a drier course, Ferrari still. I don't know, and like that's again with the rain, even how we saw a finish like Kimi Antonelli, we're talking about the rookies that raced bad. With him in a Mercedes, for him to finish shows how difficult it was. Carlos Sainz, Fernando Alonso, one of the best drivers. He went into the wall. So it showed how many errors there were. Alex Albon of Williams finishing 5th. It shows how the rain is the equalizer. But with Ferrari, like the quotes from Lewis, it was very tricky. It went a lot worse than I thought it would go. The car was really, really hard to drive.
Yeah.
He's still figuring out the car. Ferrari is going to have to just be so urgent with getting it back on track and making sure Leclerc and Lewis, because they have the second fastest car on the grid. They need to continue to be in the fight. This is not the start they wanted, but the rain ruined a lot of plans. This race was so difficult. It still leaves like so much to mystery.
Yeah.
I still don't I think McLaren, they're not a half second better than Red Bull. They're definitely a full second and more.
Yeah.
But the rain and Max and his experience, kind of makes that a wash. I don't think Ferrari is the 10th best car on the grid and Leclerc finishing as far back as he did. I don't think Williams is a top 5 car. I don't think Lance Stroll is a top 10 driver at all.
True.
But that's when we get away from the rain. We'll see. Just Ferrari still has a question marks. This was such a race where you knew there were going to be a lot of accidents, especially with the rain. But Lewis is figuring out his car on the go. He's figuring out communication with his team, like the language barrier that
shifting
he's
is way
facing.
different from Mercedes to Ferrari. That was a big issue for him.
And you see McLaren still figuring out how they're going to treat it. And with Red Bull, they still have to figure out who their number 2 is because Liam Lawson made some mistakes and didn't finish either.
Yeah. I think the other thing, too, is that we all kind of got ahead of ourselves. We're like, okay, he's reuniting with one of his racing coaches. He's at Ferrari. There was all this hype behind it. But also considering the track in Melbourne, you're talking about a track that doesn't have many extended straightaways. That's where Ferrari really pops up and performs. When you talk about speed, they're not the tight turn vehicle.
Yeah.
And when they are, yes, Lewis Hamilton has the experience to kind of manipulate that in Ferrari's favor, but not first race, not when you're still getting acclimated to the car, the communication style and the shifting. So I think that, Silverstone is his race, but I think when you get to other tracks that benefit the Ferrari vehicle, you're going to be able to actually tell where things stand and how he's going to be able to develop with that team. But you're talking about a very curvy track, a lot of tight turns, not many long straightaways. Ferrari performs on extended straightaways.
And that's what they're going to get, the Shanghai circuit. There's 2 long straights. Third shorter one. There's the high-speed chicanes like turn 7 and 8. That's what's going to be fun to see McLaren and Ferrari battle out. That race is at 3 a.m. East Coast time, though. I'm not staying up.
I was going to
I'm not.
say, are you staying in the mix for that?
Nope.
We have to as a team. We'll set an alarm, wake up at least for an hour, and go back to bed.
All right, fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. We stayed up at midnight for the Australian Grand Prix. Appreciate you guys checking out the F1 race review. She's Kasey Hudson of George Balekji. This was Boston has entered the chat. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Happy St. Paddy's Day. We'll see you after splitting some G's tomorrow.